Hello friends, welcome to the HFY Ode, where we bring you new science fiction stories, a new world, a new adventure. And yes, there is no robotic or AI voices here, only real human voices with real human touch. So let's start this journey, and please subscribe my channel if you like the stories and press the bell icon for the latest updates. Let's have a story. Okay.
The observation deck of the quarantine cruiser glowed with the low resonance of the rest cycle, the air thick with the harmonic hum of young recorders sharing memory between their bodies. Light passed from facet to facet as they traded the day's findings, crystalline forms catching the pale violet glow of the deck lamps, their lattices bright and unbroken and certain of themselves. They were the newest of their kind, freshly grown into the network, and they carried themselves with the easy confidence of beings who had never once been asked to forget something they wished they could. "They have it caged on the lower deck," said the first listener, his facets pulsing with amusement. "An unarmed one. No weapon, no armor, restraints on all four limbs, and the overseer posts a guard rotation as if it were a live munition." A ripple of bright tones moved through the gathered recorders, the resonance their kind made when something struck them as absurd. "It is a soft thing. It bleeds if you look at it too hard. What is a creature like that going to do, hum at us?" "They say it talks," offered another, the second reader, her light flickering quick and sharp. "That is the danger, apparently. It talks." More bright resonance, more laughter passed crystal to crystal. "We record 1,000 threats a cycle. We have filed the screams of dying fleets and the last transmissions of burning worlds. We hold the surrender codes of 9 species in permanent storage. And we are to be frightened of one soft animal that makes noise with its breathing parts." In the far corner of the deck, where the lamplight did not quite reach, the warden sat apart from them and said nothing. He was old in a way the young ones had no measure for. His lattice, which should have run clear and whole from base to crown, was cracked through one entire side, a great dark fracture that the light could not cross, so that half of him stayed dim no matter how the deck lamps turned. Whole clusters of his facets had gone permanently black, the resonance that should have lived in them silenced long ago. He did not share memory with the network the way the others did, freely and without thinking. He held himself closed, a single sealed thing among a people who lived as one. The young recorders had noticed this and had decided, in the cruel and incurious way of the young, that he was simply broken, and they had stopped including him in their resonance. But now the second reader's tones caught the edge of his silence, the way a current catches on a stone, and she turned her light toward him. "Warden," she said, and the others quieted to listen. "You served on the deep patrols. You have seen the soft ones up close. Surely you find this as foolish as we do, a prisoner that frightens an overseer." She brightened, inviting him to share the joke. The warden's remaining facets flickered once, slowly, the way the old turn a thought over before they let it go. "Sound," he said at last, and his resonance came out flat and grinding, scraping through the cracked side of him like something dragged over broken ground. "You think the danger of them is in their bodies, their wounds, their bleeding, the holes you can put in them. You think because a thing is soft it cannot hurt you." His dark side did not glow at all as he spoke. "I lost the others to sound, not to a weapon, to a voice and the things it carried." The deck had gone quiet. The first listener's amusement had dimmed without his quite deciding to let it. "The others," he repeated, uncertain. "You mean a crew?" "I mean everyone I was grown with," the warden said. "Every recorder, every reader, every listener on a cruiser larger than this one. I am what is left. One fractured survivor of a full lattice, and I survived only by doing a thing none of our kind had ever done, a thing I will carry alone until my facets go dark for good." He turned his crown toward them, and for the first time the young ones felt the weight of the cracked place in him, the dark that ran all the way through. "You want to laugh at the soft thing in the cage. Laugh then. But I was there the day a single human, unarmed and dying, walked onto a deck very like this one and gave us something we could not put down. And by the time we understood what he had handed us, it was already inside every one of us, and it would not come out." No one laughed now. The lamplight turned slow and violet across their bright, unbroken bodies, and the warden, sealed and silent and scarred, began at last to open the one memory he had spent a lifetime trying to keep sealed. It was 40 cycles past, he told them, when the latter still believed the war was a matter of position and supply. The humans had been pushed back along 3 fronts. Their ships were slower, their numbers fewer, their technology a generation behind, and the strategists of the network had calculated the outcome to a certainty that left no room for doubt. The humans would be encircled, starved of their lanes, and made to surrender within the cycle. It was, the warden said, the sort of certainty that comes just before a fall. His cruiser had been running interdiction along a dead stretch of the lane, hunting for stragglers, when the sensors caught a single human vessel adrift with its drive cold. It was not running. It was not hiding. It simply sat there, venting atmosphere from a dozen breaches, turning slowly end over end, and broadcasting on an open channel a signal so weak the listeners almost missed it. One life sign aboard. One soft, failing heartbeat. "We thought it was a wreck," the warden said. "A casualty drifting home to no one. The overseer ordered a recovery, the way you would collect any intelligence. We expected a corpse. We were almost disappointed to find one alive." They cut the human out of his ruined cockpit and brought him aboard, and the warden remembered the strangeness of him even then. He was wounded badly. A deep cold burn down one side and something broken in his chest that made each breath a small, terrible labor. He should have been afraid. Every other prisoner they had ever taken had come aboard screaming, or pleading, or fighting the restraints until they tore their own bodies. The soft ones, when cornered, were known to do desperate things. This one did none of it. They locked the restraints on all 4 of his limbs, and he let them. They scanned him for weapons and found nothing, and he watched them do it with a calm that did not match his wounds at all. And when the overseer finally addressed him, demanding in the trade tongue that he give his designation and his fleet, the human looked up at the great bright crystalline forms arranged around him, at the recording fields shimmering in the air to catch his every word, and the warden remembered, even now, the exact way the soft creature's face had changed. He had smiled. "You understand," the warden said, and his cracked side stayed dark. "That we did not yet know what a smile was. We thought it a grimace of pain. We logged it as distress." He paused, and the young recorders found themselves leaning toward him, their earlier scorn entirely gone. "We were wrong. He was not in distress. He was relieved. He had been trying to be captured for a very long time, and he had finally found the right people to do it." The warden's flat resonance dropped lower. He had been looking for a species that could not forget. "And we had walked out into the dead lane, and gathered him up, and carried him into the one place in the galaxy he most wanted to be." The first listener's light wavered. Why would a prisoner want? "That," said the warden, "is the next part, and it is where I would stop you if I were kind. But you laughed at the thing in the cage, so you will hear all of it." His facets dimmed. "We asked him for his fleet. He did not give it to us. Instead, he asked, very politely, if he might tell us a story first." "The overseer should have refused," the warden said. "That was the first true mistake, and he had made it himself in part because he had been the senior recorder on that deck, and the choice of what entered the record had been partly his to make. But understand what we were," he told them. "We were a people who collected. Every species we met we filed. Every tongue, every cry, every last transmission, we held forever and shared between us so that nothing was ever truly lost. A prisoner who wished to speak unprompted was not a threat to such a people. He was a gift. He was data, freely offered, and the gathering of data was the very shape of our souls." So the overseer's resonance had pulsed its ascent, and the recording fields had brightened to catch every sound, and the young recorders of that cruiser, eager and bright and certain, had opened themselves to listen, the way the young ones on this deck were opening themselves now. And the human, restrained and bleeding and calm, had begun to speak. He did not give them coordinates. He did not give them strategy. He told them, in a low, steady voice that the translators rendered into clean resonance, about a child and a river. Nothing, the warden said. Understand that it was the smallest thing. A human child in the season the humans call summer on the bank of a river near the place where the child was grown. The water was high and brown with the spring melt. There was an older one, the child's brother, who could not swim well and who went out too far on a dare and was taken by the current. The warden's voice had changed without his seeming to notice it. The grinding flatness had gone out of it. He was not reciting. He was remembering, with the helpless completeness of a being who could not do otherwise. The child went in after the brother. Too small, too weak, no chance at all by any reckoning. And the child caught the brother by the wrist in the cold brown water, and the current pulled them both down, and the child would not let go. Would not. The river took them under 3 times, and 3 times the child came up still holding on, until a farmer downstream waded in and pulled them both out onto the mud, half drowned. The child's small hand locked so tight around the brother's wrist that the farmer had to pry the fingers loose one at a time. He stopped. The deck was silent. That was the story, the warden said quietly. A child who would not let go of a brother in a river. There was no weapon in it. No code, no fleet, no secret. It was a thing that had happened to one soft creature in one summer on one small world, told plainly with the names of the people in it and the color of the water and the cold of it. And when it was finished, the human looked up at us and he said, "Now you have it. Now you'll keep it. Thank you." And he closed his eyes as if he had set down something heavy. The first listener's facets flickered uneasily. And then, said the warden, the overseer found it sentimental and useless and ordered it purged from the record, a waste of storage, animal nonsense. His cracked side stayed perfectly dark, and the lattice attempted the purge, and the purge failed. A small cold tone moved through the gathered recorders, the resonance their kind made when something did not fit. We assumed a flaw, the warden went on, a corrupted index. The curator ran the purge a second time with full authority, the kind of command that scours a memory clean to the substrate. The report came back the same. Purge incomplete, memory persists. We ran it a third time, a fourth. The child and the river and the cold brown water would not leave the record. He turned his crown slowly across them. We told ourselves it was a technical matter, a thing for the maintenance cycle. We did not yet understand that we had not failed to delete a file. We had failed to delete a thing that had decided, all on its own, to stay. The warden let the silence sit before he went on, and the young recorders did not break it. It was the curator who first understood. He told them, and the curator had been the finest of them, an ancient specialist whose whole long life had been the study of how memory was held and moved and kept. The curator went down to the cell himself, with the recording fields running, and he asked the human a single question. He asked why the story would not delete. And the human, the warden said, had been glad to explain. He told the curator that he was something his people called a rememberer, not a soldier, though he had been one, not a scientist, a keeper of stories, the kind of human whose work was to hold the tales of the others and carry them and pass them on so that the dead were not truly gone. He said every human society had grown them, in every age, under 100 different names, because his species had learned a thing very early that no other species had learned. The warden's resonance dropped. He said, "We don't remember facts, we remember stories. It's the only way we've ever been able to hold anything at all." The curator had not understood, and had said so, and the human had explained it with the patience of someone who had explained it many times before. Other species, he said, stored knowledge the way the lattice did, as data, indexed and clean and separable, each piece its own thing that could be added or removed without touching the rest. But humans had never been able to do that. Their memories were poor and leaky and unreliable. A human could not hold a list of 1,000 facts the way a single recorder held the surrender codes of 9 species. So humans had been forced, across all the long climb of their evolution, to find another way to keep what mattered, and the way they had found was the story. They bound knowledge to feeling. They wrapped the thing to be remembered inside a person, a place, a danger, a loss, because feeling was the one kind of glue their leaking minds could not wash out. A human would forget a number in a heartbeat. A human would carry the story of a child in a cold river for 70 years and tell it to grandchildren, who would tell it to theirs. He said we had it backward, the warden told them. He said we thought our perfect memory made us strong, and it did, but it had one flaw we had never found because we had never needed to. A perfect memory cannot choose what to keep. It keeps everything exactly as received. And a story built the way humans build them, bound to feeling, shaped to lodge and hold, is not a fact you can index and remove. It is a hook. Once it is in, the act of trying to remove it requires you to handle it, and to handle it is to feel it again, and to feel it again is to set it deeper. The purge does not delete the story. The purge teaches the story where the soft places are. The first listener's light had gone very still, but it was one memory, he said, almost pleading, in one record contained. That, said the warden, is what the curator said, and the human looked at him and asked him a question of his own. He asked, when your kind tried to delete it, did you do it alone, or did the whole ship try together? The warden's facets dimmed nearly to dark, and the curator went silent, because the answer was that we had done it together as we did everything, as one network sharing one memory across every body aboard. And the human nodded slowly the way they do, and he said, then it's not in your record anymore. It's in all of you, and you handed it around to do it. You passed it body to body trying to throw it out, and every one of you touched it, and now every one of you is carrying it, and you're going to keep carrying it to each other for the rest of your lives, because that's what a network is. It's just a lot of people who can't stop sharing. The warden's resonance had fallen to almost nothing. He told us he had spent the war looking for us, for a species that remembered perfectly and shared completely, because a story given to such a species does not die. It does not even slow down, it only spreads. A thin tone of fear moved through the young recorders, and the warden let them feel it. The curator demanded to know why, he said. Why a rememberer, a keeper of his people's stories, would do such a thing, and the human told him the truth, which was the most frightening part of all. The warden's cracked side stayed black. He said his world was already gone. The encirclement we were so proud of, the certainty that had no room for doubt, it had worked. His people on that front were finished, the colony burned, the fleet broken, everyone he had known and everyone whose stories he carried already dead. He was the last rememberer of a dead world, holding the only copies of 100,000 lives, and he had one question left to answer. What do you do, he asked us, when you are the last person who remembers and you are dying and there is no one left to tell? The warden paused. And then he answered it. He said, you find the one enemy in all the galaxy that can never forget, and you make them carry it for you, forever. What happened next, the warden said, took less than a cycle, and he had spent 40 cycles trying to forget it, and he had failed because of course he had. That was the whole horror of it. They were a people who could not fail to remember. It began as a strangeness in the resonance. The story of the child and the river which had refused every purge began to surface on its own. A recorder 3 decks away, who had never been in the cell, who had only shared the failed deletions across the network like everyone else, found the cold brown water rising unbidden in his memory in the middle of an unrelated task. Then another. Then a cluster of young readers reported the same image, the small hand locked around the wrist, surfacing without being called. We told ourselves it was contamination from the repeated purge attempts, the warden said. We were still telling ourselves it was technical, and then the human began to tell the second story. He had not stopped, the warden explained. That was the thing they had not understood. The first story had been the hook, small and complete and harmless seeming, the one that proved it would hold. But a rememberer carried more than one tale. He carried 100,000. And once the first was lodged and spreading, he simply kept speaking, hour after hour in his low, steady voice, and each new story he told was built to catch on the one before it, so that to remember any of them was to be pulled toward all of them. A mother who gave her seat in a lifeboat to a stranger's child. A soldier who carried a wounded enemy 3 days across a desert to a field hospital and then sat with him until he died. A whole town that hid a family in their walls for 2 winters and never once spoke of it, even after. Small stories, human stories, each one bound to feeling, each one shaped to lodge, each one passing through the recording fields and into the network, and from the network into every body aboard, because the recording could not be stopped without admitting that recording itself had become the wound. Overseer ordered the cell sealed, the warden said, ordered the human silenced, but it was already too late because the stories did not need him anymore. They were loose in the lattice. They were sharing themselves between us the way our own thoughts did, indistinguishable from our own thoughts, and a recorder cannot stop sharing any more than you can stop the light from moving between your facets. It is what we are. His resonance ground low and terrible. We began to come apart, not in our bodies. In our resonance. A people who had lived their whole existence as one clean shared memory now found that memory full of strangers, soft, dying, brave strangers, 100,000 of them, all of them feeling things our kind had no name for and no defense against, all of them refusing to leave. The young ones broke first. Their lattices could not hold the weight of so much borrowed grief. We heard them go dark across the network, one cluster after another, their facets shattering from the inside as memories they could not contain and could not release tore them apart. The young recorders on the deck had drawn close together without realizing it. Their light dimmed, and the warden looked at them and did not spare them. The human died near the end of it, he said. His wounds had been mortal from the start. He had only held himself together long enough to finish. The overseer reached the cell at the last and demanded, with what was left of him, why. And the human, almost gone, looked up and said the last thing he ever said, the thing I have carried through the dark side of myself for 40 cycles. The warden's cracked half stayed black as the void. He said, I'm not asking you to forgive us. I'm asking you to remember us. You're going to anyway, you can't help it now. And then he told us his name. He made us take it. He said it 3 times so it would lodge like the rest. Joseph, 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 and he asked us to keep it, and then he was gone. The warden fell silent. When he spoke again, his voice had thinned to almost nothing. I survived, he said, because I did the one thing no recorder is ever meant to do. As the network died around me, as the stories poured through the resonance and took body after body, I cut myself out of it. I severed every shared channel. I tore my own lattice free of the network while it was still whole, and the tearing is what you see when you look at the dark side of me. That fracture is the wound of my own choosing, the place where I cut away the part of me that was us. I made myself alone. A thing our kind is not built to be and was never meant to survive. His facets guttered. I have been alone inside myself for 40 cycles. I cannot share memory anymore. The channels are scarred shut. I am the only one of my entire lattice who did not die, and I lived by becoming in the one way that mattered to my people, dead. That is the cost. That is what the soft thing in the cell asked of me, though he never knew my name and I never gave it. He asked me to choose between carrying his stories and being myself, and I am still paying for the choice. The cruiser, he told them, had been scuttled. There had been no other way. A lattice that could not stop sharing, infected with a thing it could not delete, was a danger to every other lattice it ever touched. The network's high authorities had taken the survivors. There were a handful, all severed, all alone, all ruined the way he was ruined, and had quarantined them, and studied them, and had come at last to the conclusion that had rewritten the whole doctrine of the war. They learned what I am telling you now, the warden said, that the humans were never the soft things we mocked, that their leaking, unreliable, story-shaped memory was not a weakness but the most dangerous weapon any species had ever evolved, because it had taught them to make knowledge that wanted to spread, knowledge bound so tightly to feeling that no clean mind could refuse it. We had spent the war trying to kill their bodies. We never understood that a human body was the least of them. A human is only the thing that carries the stories. Kill the human, and the story walks out of the room in whoever heard it last. He turned his crown across the young ones a final time, and the lamplight moved violet over their dimmed and frightened forms. That is why there is a human in the cage on the lower deck, and why the overseer fears it, and why your laughter was the laughter of children who have never been hurt. We do not capture them to interrogate them anymore. We capture them to make certain they never get the chance to speak. The doctrine is one line long now, the shortest doctrine in all our archives, and every recorder learns it before they are permitted near a soft one. His resonance dropped to its lowest grinding register. A human is never allowed to talk. That is all. That is everything we learned, written as small as it would go. The deck was utterly silent. The first listener's light barely flickered. You wanted to know what a soft animal could do to us, the warden said. Now you carry the answer, and you will carry it the way I have, because I have just told it to you, with the names in it and the cold of the river and the human who would not stop. I have done to you exactly what was done to me. I am sorry for it. But it was the only way to make you understand, and understanding is the only thing that has ever kept any of us alive. His facets dimmed toward dark. The humans did not need to outlive us. They did not need to win a single battle in the end. They only needed us to remember them, and once we did, they never left. Joseph has not left. He has been here in me for 40 cycles, a soft dying thing who beat an entire lattice with a story about a child in a river, and he will be here when my last facet goes dark, and then the warden's voice failed and steadied and finished, and then he will be in you. Because I have just handed him to you, and you cannot give him back. No one laughed. No one moved. On the lower deck, behind the sealed door and the recording fields and the doctrine written as small as it would go, the soft thing in the cage sat patiently in the dark and waited the way its kind had always waited, for someone to forget the rule and listen.